Well, if you think education is expensive, try illiteracy. And this is a time recognized, time tested, and indeed a time approved dictum that remains the fact of truth throughout generations. Welcome to Reflections. My name is Yusuf Nadab Usman, and we're reaching you from the Nigerian Television Authority, the largest TV network in Africa. Every week on this program, we try as much as we can to look at the personality within time and space, and of course the activities in between around this personality, so that we can see and reflect so much on what he or she has done, and then see the impact of that on our national life collectively and individually. This week, our personality is Professor Rukayyatu Ahmed Rufa'i, two-time commissioner in Jigawa State, Health and Education to be specific, and of course, a one-time Minister of Education during the Goodluck Jonathan days, talking about 2010, between 2010 and 2013. You're welcome, Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Who is Professor Rukayyatu Ahmed?
I'm Professor Rukayyatu Ahmed Rufa'i, OON, born in Ringim, Jigawa State in 1959. I had my early education and Islamic education in Ringim Katutu Primary School and Islamia School, which I did through up to 1970. In 1970, I left for Shekara Girls Boarding Primary School in Kano, where I had a boarding experience of primary education for 3 years. And then in 1972, I graduated from my primary education and went to Government Girls College, Dala, Kano, from 1973 to 1977. And after my secondary education, I went to Bayero University, Kano, for my School of Preliminary Studies, which I did for 4 years, which I did a full-term preliminary studies. And I was lucky to have had that full-term, since at that time it was two levels. For those that may have had their work very well, then it would be full-term before the actual degree. And those that had it not too good, then they had 6 term before the degree. So I was opportune to have the 6th full-term, after which in the following year, 1978, I started my bachelor's degree in education and with history as my teaching subject. And that I did for 3 years, from 1978 to 1981. And after 1981, I went for my NYSC, which I did in Kano, because that time I had a child and a baby at that time, because I married since 1977, even though fully into the marriage in 1979. So I had a baby in 1980. So at that time I was in Kano for my NYSC, and I taught at Women Arabic Teachers, Government Girls Arabic Teachers College, Golden Dutse, WATC, for 1 year. And after that, after graduating from the NYSC, that was in 1982, 81 to 82, then I started work at College of Education, Kumbotso, Kano. So as I was in College of Education, just after a year, I was made a head of department. So a few years after my engagement, I had to go for my master's degree from 1984 to 1987. And after graduating in 1987, in 1988, I joined my husband in West Virginia University for my PhD. I had the opportunity, because it may be strange for us from this part of the country to go to as far as the United States for PhD at that time. But I was fortunate that my husband, Dr. Ahmed Rufa'i, was there for his own PhD. So I joined him in 1988, and I had my doctoral degree in education in curriculum studies, which I graduated in 1991, from 88 to 91. And as soon as I graduated, we came back to the country, and I continued lecturing in College of Education, Kano. But something historic happened at that time. What is that? As soon as I came back in 1991, Jigawa State was created. So I had my own mission and my own feeling at that time, and my motive was to come back to Kano State College of Education and also display my experience, because I was sponsored based on ESTA code to study for 3 years abroad. So I had that passion that I wanted to come back and give back, pay back. But Jigawa State was created. So by the time I reported for work, they said, too bad, you are no longer with us. You are now in Gumal, Jigawa College of Education, Gumal. Not that I don't want to go to Jigawa, but at that time, the road was not so good. And I had 3 children at that time. So I could not really be traveling to Jigawa and back on daily basis. So as such, in 1992, I had to transfer my services to Bahrain University, Kano, where I am up to now.
You found it a little bit, difficult to have accepted to stay in Jigawa after coming back in 1991 because it was a positive, nice coincidence. You really wanted the study, you got it. And then you were part of a place which sponsored you all through. And here you are, more or less like a dilemma.
Yeah, it was really indeed a dilemma because I was married and I had children. So I could not leave my family to go to Jigawa to stay at that time. And the road was not so good. So based on that, I started, but really I could not, I had to really transfer. I knew that I may have to transfer my services to the university eventually. Because even before I came back, the Vice Chancellor then was in touch with my late father, that since I had that experience, and at that time, as back as 1991, not many of us as a female were really at that level of education. So they wanted me to really come back to join the university as soon as I come back. I said, no, I may not, because I really want to do that payback. Then maybe after 3 years or so, I could transfer to the university. But because of that dilemma, and the road was not really so good, I transferred the services to the university at that time.
Let's look back a little. Let's go back, far back a little. 1965 to 70, even when you joined the primary school, secondary school, you were very few as female students in schools. You remember how not so popular Western education was in the North then. And it takes the grace of God, I would say, for parents to allow their children to go to school, talk less of allowing women or rather young girls to attend, Western schools. How did your own happen?
Yeah, my own is very easy because my father was a permanent secretary at that time. So he has been in the system, and he went through schooling. In fact, he studied abroad. So he had that feeling that all his children will be educated. And by the grace of God, even our youngest one is also a lawyer at level 15, 16 now in the federal service. So it's because of the experience that my dad has, and that he had the feeling that all his children will be educated, even girls.
Okay.
And so he encouraged us. And I must say that I pay tribute to him, because all the encouragement that I saw through schooling was basically from my parents, but mainly from my dad.
Okay.
Because he really wanted us to study. In fact, initially I was not even sure what my future may be, like every other child. But I knew that I had to study. I had to pass my exams to make my dad in particular happy.
And he was happy.
And he was really he died just recently, a few months ago. So he saw me through all the experiences. He was the #1 consultant, I could say. Of course, I was lucky, because by the time I got married, my husband has the same passion. So as my dad, nursed me to that level. So when he married me also to another person that was also interested in my progress. So that's why I had that double advantage.
Oh, that's
and
good.
Of course, that's why I really had no limit in terms of exposure of whatever position that Allah had really wanted me to hold.
And of course, no limit in trying to keep reading and reading and reading.
Not at all.
You joined your husband in West Virginia University to pursue your doctorate degree when he was there. I think they hardly could let you go then without allowing you to do one or two things for them. Did you start work there in the West Virginia University?
Yes, I did. My husband was also in the service here in Kano in Bayero University, Kano, because before he went for his own, PhD. And then when I joined him, I was opportune to have that opportunity to be a graduate assistant. So I taught in West Virginia University for about 3 years also. At the time that I was having my doctoral degree study program, at the same time I was also teaching.
Let's look at your international, endeavors now. Since we started talking about West Virginia University, you are a Chevening scholar.
Yes, I was. Yeah.
How did that happen?
I was, it's a British Council and Home Affairs program, which they identify key persons that they take to the UK, to go for their scholarship. There's a scholarship also, there's also a fellowship. So I was lucky to have joined one on women participation in 2006. And it was a program that saw about 20 prominent women from different parts of the world. And we were trained in terms of how to participate in national and international affairs all over the world. So it was a program that was having the motive for giving us more exposure in terms of how to address issues. As women, there are challenges, of course, even though it depends on the levels. For me, I thank God I didn't have really much challenges, maybe because of the background. But many women do have challenges. So we were trained on how to approach and to address most of the challenges, especially as you are working among men. You will see that some of them could be accommodating, but for individual differences, some may not. So how do you now make your mark? Because the training is to, wherever you are, try to make your own mark, to try to make your own contribution, so that you just don't come and pass. So it was a very good program for me, and I cherish it.
Okay, Africa has more or less the highest number of, out-of-school children.
Yeah.
And then when you look at it, you find most of those, the female folk has a chunk of that number. And then it seems as if, as an African, and of course, a woman who was at one time chaired the Ministers' Conference of the African Union on Education, and then seen also going around the places. You are at the UNESCO, you are at the United Nations, you are all over the places representing Nigeria in all things education, I would say. What did you see going around Africa, chairing the Ministers' Conference on Africa, and of course, seeing the young ladies that are out of school, and of course, yearning to be educated? What was the feeling inside you? How was it? How too bad or how too good? Or how was it the feeling?
In fact, let's start from home, right from my own locality, and then of course Nigeria at large, and of course, as you are also mentioning the issue of Africa, it is a very sad situation when you look at the situation of girls. Even though over the years we have seen some of us through, in terms of encouragement, in terms of bringing up policies that will now enhance girls' participation in schooling. But all the same, we are not yet where we wanted to be. We are still in the process. So for me, especially coming from Jigawa, so one of the states that is having highest number of out of school, especially girls, I always feel very bad about it. Apart from all the awareness campaigns that we have been launching, in terms of exposing and talking to the parents, modeling through some people, even when I was a minister, were surprised at my own dressing. But I know what I'm doing, number one, for my religion, and number two, for my own people, to see that you can still be who you are, you can still become anybody in life without compromising your own position, your own culture, your own tradition, your own religion. So as I cover myself, I'm also campaigning for my own people to come out and also become somebody to be like either me or even beyond, depending. It depends on God's wish. So all that we have been doing in terms of talking to girls, talking to parents, talking to mothers, all this issue of grants, all this issue of having to ensure that girls are participating. All the same, we are still not yet there. And of course, it runs across Africa. Most of the countries are also facing same challenges. Of course, we are moving gradually, but we are not yet there.
Moving gradually, that doesn't sound really encouraging.
Yeah, we are moving because when you see girls graduating or coming out from schools, you can see that yes, we are moving, but there are so many challenges.
The out-of-school children syndrome is one big issue in this country.
Very big issue.
Very, very big in the sense that everybody's talking about it. When you roam the streets, especially in the north, you find a lot of them.
So many problems. You know, the issue of out of school is a very big issue.
Yeah.
And it's not only in the northern part of the country. We try to address even at the southern part of the country. We realize that in the northern part of the country, over 10 million, like 12 million children, every time, all the programs that we are introducing, not only me and others that were supporting me and different other levels that even came before us, people have been addressing, but you still remember that 10 point something million out of school still remains.
10 million,
Because,
10 million doesn't come
because
down
of the
so much.
population. You know, we try to address that through that. We say, okay, then we sat down and said that the major out of school in northern part of the country was the Almajiri.
Yeah.
So what were we to do? We introduced the Almajiri system of education, over 100 schools, about 127 or so. And our plan at that time did not continue. You know that we have to introduce these Almajiri schools so that we can now take them out of the streets. In fact, some of them even boarded. We said that we launched that in Sokoto, if you could remember. And our plan was that every year, each of these states, it was model schools that we did. It's basic education, it's basically a state affair and local government. But because of the large number of out of school, and because we were always addressing the issue in terms of international fora that we have this, so we said, okay, now we introduce these schools and we charge the state governments to continue to build. For example, in Kano or in Jigawa or Katana or wherever, we introduced like maybe 5, 7 schools. And then we took some of this Almajiri out of the streets and then we placed them in these schools. And the plan that was agreed at that time is that every year or 2, 3 years, the state government will now look and see how many Almajiri were they still having out of school. And they have to continue to build these schools up to the time that they will say, okay, now nobody was on the street. But unfortunately, since those schools, I'm not sure if more were added. And the southern part of the country realized the issue of boys drop out. So we had to also introduce schools to address them. And then we realized that, we have this issue that only girls were attending schools in the north, in the south, because we saw that they are going for trade, the boys. So we said that, okay, we have to introduce and then establish schools that will also cater for them, so that we can now have the whole country to take, students or children from the streets to schools. But unfortunately, with all that, with the campaigns, with the public enlightenment, with the, introduction of, girls' education project, so that we can have more girls in school, the issue of teacher education program, and all those programs that were established, unfortunately, the issue of out of school continues.
This very administration, the Buhari administration, just about maybe a year or 2 ago, connecting to the Almajiri issue, states, especially in the north, took up some initiative to, get these boys out of the streets, then take them back to their various, states. And it was more or less like a fanfare then. It was official, state governors received them, accommodated them, and the rest of them. And these are all efforts as trying to see that a lot of these out-of-school children on the streets are taken off the streets and back to school. What's your take on this initiative by the northern governors, and indeed the lull again in that very effort, because you hardly can hear anything anymore?
Yes. It is not a bad idea, really. Even at that time when we were talking about the Almajiri schools, we were also emphasizing that we didn't want the Almajiri to be going around from, like, say, Kano, you see a small child in Katsina, or you see him in Zamfara, and so on. We're also trying to discourage that. What we were thinking at that time is that even the Almajiri that we may have, the whole concept is poverty. The whole concept is to do with poverty. People are having more and more children that they cannot really cut up. So they allow them just to be running around. If it is in good faith, that is the receiving governors having their own Almajiri, taking them either to Almajiri schools or to public schools, because it doesn't matter if they're in public schools. It is just to take care of them. And even the Almajiri schools, we introduce both Islamic education and also, the issue that we had in public schools. So even if they are taken to public school, but to take care of them so they do not roam around, it may not be a bad idea. Our major problem is lack of planning. And unfortunately, Even some of our malams are not helping matters in that regard. You can have children. Yes, nobody is saying that you may not have, but you have to make sure that you cater for them. But our main problem is that we are encouraged to have more and more and more, but in the long run, some of us do not take care of them. And the seats, they are just for the public. So they become public nuisance, and they become a problem. So if it is an idea of taking them, but take care of them, is not a bad idea. But if you are there to go around the streets again, we are coming back to square one.
People sort of take cover behind or under religion in trying to perpetuate this negative practice because they say it's seeking for knowledge. And the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad said, yeah, go and seek for knowledge even if it's as far as China. So leaving Jigawa to Yola, for instance, Dute to Yola or from Maiduguri to Sokoto, it's not that far as you can go to India or China or wherever seeking for knowledge, backing it with that kind of excuse. As an educationist, this has to do with some mindset.
Yes.
Trying to understand these things and then work them properly.
Yeah.
How do we get out of this kind of thinking and get out of this kind of
yeah, it's through public enlightenment. And unfortunately, when you do the public enlightenment over and over, we have been doing that, but people, I'm not sure if some of them are really listening. And the malams are, some of them, we have very good number of them that are also preaching positively. But some of them do not see why you preach against having children to go around and so on. Going, for example, from Zamfara or from Adamawa to Zamfara or to Katsina or wherever, in itself is not a bad idea. In itself. But the methodology is the problem. If, for example, a child is coming to Zamfara to school, maybe it's a boarding school or they're in the Malam's house, that he takes care of them, they eat well, they learn and then they study and then they are not a social problem, it's not a bad idea. But if he's coming from anywhere and then he's going to, even where to sleep becomes a problem. And then they'll be going around to beg for what to eat, no food for them, no standard. So that is where the problem comes. So it is the issue of methodology. But if a child can really be taken care of, it's not a bad idea to travel and then seek for knowledge. It's not a bad idea. But that way, the process, that is what is wrong. And fundamentally, it is wrong in Nigeria.
Fundamentally wrong in Nigeria?
Yes.
If you are asked to advise, what would you say?
No, I would advise that, number one, every parent must be up to his own responsibilities.
Right.
Most of this that we're talking about are Muslims. And in Islam, the responsibility is that you take care of your wife, you take care of your children. There is nowhere in the Quran that says that you have a child and you allow him to roam around the street to seek for food. Nowhere. Of course, people may argue because of this poverty that is coming in. But all the same, taking responsibility is very, very critical. Yes. So people should take up to their responsibilities. As a parent, if you decide to have 20 children, it's your problem. But you have to take care of them. They should not be a social issue. They should not be public property. They will be running around, going after people's tires, going after people's phones, and then all these things, even in the name of eating, that they don't even have 3 square meals. So parents should be very responsible.
This is Reflections, and we're reaching you from the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA, discussing this week with Professor Rukayyatu Ahmed, Rufa'i, one-time Minister of Education, of course, one-time Commissioner Education, Commissioner Health in Jigawa State, and of course right now, a lecturer at the Bayero University, Kano. We'll be back in a moment. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Professor of Curriculum Studies. When somebody mentions curriculum in this country, it sounds a little bit of a heavy thing because it's a thing that, begins to mold the child from the beginning up to where he's supposed to get a career and move on.
The issue of
guidance and counseling
Well,
in relation to curriculum?
Yes, guidance and counseling is certainly part of the school curriculum, and it's supposed to be there if it is not even there, but I believe that in most cases it should, so that students have that career guidance, and they have counselors in school where, even at the lower level, that you identify students that have challenges, that do have challenges, and then you counsel them and you guide them in whatever, maybe personal issues. But then, of course, in terms of the official ones, they are expected to be guided in terms of what they are going to do in future. So that has been part of the school curriculum. But in Nigeria and like in other parts of the countries, parts of the world, curriculum is not static. It is reviewed based on the circumstances. At least every 5 years, a curriculum has to be reviewed. As I'm talking to you now, we are reviewing the university curriculum, the entire university system curriculum, especially for the public schools. And the issue of guidance and counseling, as you're talking about, is also coming up, because to locate it and where it is now and it's also part of what is being done now. So even at the lower level of schooling, guidance and counseling is also very critical, that it should be part of the school curriculum. If in one or the other, by design or by omission or whatever, it's not there, then it must be a serious omission, because every child needs to be guided in terms of what he's going to do in future, so that by the time the child is growing up, he's assured of what he's expected to do in life, based on his own motivation, based on his own capacity. Because he may want to study, to do medicine, not interested in sciences. So he has to be guided in terms of what exactly he's expected to do. And I believe that should be part of the school, curriculum.
Okay, do you see that in your students as they approach you now?
In Nigeria, so many things are wrong. So many things are wrong. If we're talking about the issue of education, we have to talk about the issue of quality of education. The quality is reducing and reducing and reducing by the day. So some of them are really not as strong and sound as you will expect them to be at that level. Because if like now a child has graduated from senior secondary school, is now in level 1 of the university, you will expect that he has certain skills that will equip him to be really a level 100 or 200 student in the university. But unfortunately, some of them, you can see them coming confused. So something may be wrong else somewhere around, So you cannot really be sure whether they are truly guided or whether, they had that quality education required. And that is not even the case. It is not as more, but it is even pronounced at the higher level. For me now, I do not even teach at that level. I teach at a higher level like masters and PhD. So even at the master's level, some of them you do not see them as really highly skilled in their own areas of specialization as you will expect. So the issue of quality education is still a very big problem. Even though I know that even before my tenure as a minister, my predecessors have done their best. And when I was there, the issue of quality was very much stressed. Access, quality, issue of funding, they are very critical in the system. But still, you can see, as I am seeing it today, and likewise, from both basic, senior, and then at the tertiary level, I do not see that quality education as I will expect to see. I'm not saying that everybody is having less quality education, but majority are really.
That might have informed, maybe, a fallout from your commissionership of education. You must have noticed that as you continue. And then when you become the Minister of Education, you also saw that it's still another opportunity for you to put in your mark. And that brought in the idea of, early child care, education and development, maybe catching them young and the rest of this. Is one of your key areas as a minister. Was it meant to address that issue?
During my tenure as a minister, we realized that early childhood education do exist at that time, but only for the privileged ones. Those that are going to public schools or those that are from less privileged families do not really attend that early childhood education. They simply start from age 6 and then primary 1. So they do not have that prior experience. And we extended, we said that, well, that shouldn't be the case. So the introduction of 1 year early childhood became compulsory at that time. So we made the system to be 16334 system, so that at least even a child, if he's from a less privileged background, can attend schooling a year before he's expected to be in the primary school. So we started that, and I'm sure it's on, so that we have people from public schools that are attending that early childhood education then before they also start the primary education.
When you are the commissioner, these issues came up. Family planning has been there for long. And being a commissioner in Jigawa State, in that very area, where really that very thinking thrives so much, that there shouldn't be any family planning as such. And how did you tackle that, idea?
It is a very delicate situation. And you remember we are talking of those 90s. So we were not really particular about the fact that people must go for family planning. Remember that it is a rural state. So majority of wives or women are basically at home. And those that they have time, so they can have their own children, they can nurse them. But our focus at that time was more to do with enhancing the level of healthcare facilities. So that we had to introduce general hospitals, upgrade some of our health centers to general hospitals, ensure that we had a specialist hospital. And I'm proud to say that the specialist hospital that we were able to build during Lieutenant Colonel Rashid Shokoni at that time when I was his commissioner is the very one that is now serving for Federal University Dutse, which we also established when I was a minister, the 12 new universities at that time. So we established a specialist hospital in Dutse, which is by all standards, a specialist hospital. So that was what we focused on at that time, Minister of Health. And in education, it was a very big issue. That was during Sulalamido's period as governor. The problem was that all the schools, we didn't have schools, I can say, literally, because, they were all in shambles. So the major issue that we did was to ensure that we even had standard schools at that time. So we had to go after renovation, after establishment of schools, after ensuring that we had laboratories, because we had sometimes over 200 students in a class. It's difficult to say because it is like impossible. Of course it is impossible, but it was the reality at that time. They will be just hanging around, but as butterflies by the window side and so on. So we had to ensure that we sanitize the system and then pick up as, education sector properly.
Okay, let's come to the center now. Let's look at the inner side of education. Evaluation through examinations, one of the ways of trying to gauge, students' understanding of what the teachers and the lecturers, give to them and by way of teaching. And in doing that, you can hardly run away from the issue of examination malpractice, which has become so much of a problem in Nigerian schools and universities all over. And that might have informed, I don't know, why, you came up with the idea of, computer-based, test, especially for JAM as a prerequisite or as a methodology for going through that. Was it an attempt to address examination malpractice?
Yes, because the examination malpractice was really so rampant at that time. So by the time we decided to establish, under Ojerinde at that time, we decided to establish this computer-based system. It's basically to address exam malpractice. And if you look at the way that it was structured, or it is structured, I may be sitting, I may be answering questions and so on, but the person next to me is having his own computer with different set of questions, different answers and so on, so that we minimize the issue of examination malpractice. And what is also happening, it has been reduced to the various minimum, I can see. It is a very good initiative. Even though initially I was telling the JAM registrar then that, well, some of the states are rural, like mine and several others. So how do you now ensure that our students can even sit for this computer-based? I said we had to do that side by side with paper and pencil test before we can now graduate to full-blown computer-based testing. And I'm happy that now it is on course and students are also benefiting. And what the JAM registrar is doing, Professor Loide, in terms of ensuring NIN, National Identification Number, is also reflected in the registration, is also to continue to check and to ensure students' records are perfected and to continue to check, the examination malpractice. It is a very good way of ensuring that things are also sanitized as far as the testing is concerned.
Right. It's still a work in progress anyway.
Well, it is, and we hope it will work well.
Fine. Funding is one area education suffers a lot, and that causes a lot of problems. Strikes here and there, and then you find a dilapidation of structures, and then lack of morale among lecturers, teachers, and then even the pupils. And funds could never be enough, one knows that, but at least proper utilization of what we have is one area where you try as much as possible to make it work. You try to instill in, the school and the school system that whatever house, no matter how small it is, make the best use of it. And that informed, I must say, your view of trying to review the education tax fund, and which you did. Now, that tax fund, if you could comment on it now, do you see the fruits coming out?
Oh, yes. Certainly, that education tax fund, it is something that is very, very important and part of the university system that is historic. Tertiary education, and anyway, initially education trust fund, that is ETF, and then later on tertiary education trust fund. That is after we had the bill passed to ensure that it is only concentrating on tertiary education level, at the tertiary education level. Remember that we have 2% consolidated revenue for basic education, that is primary and junior secondary schools, where we use that to ensure that throughout the nation that we have that funding that is going into that system at that level. So what we did during that time under the President and Chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakub, is to now change the law or adjust the law to make it only tertiary education are benefiting from the TED fund, so that you can have that other level. The same thing, this one is also 2% of the task from companies, and then that one is 2% from consolidated revenue. So we made that to be for basic education, and then the 2% for the task to be for tertiary education trust fund, that is TED fund, and basically for tertiary education. So your question is very clear. Even somebody that is coming into a visit into Nigeria, whether state college of education or polytechnic or federal or universities, the major mark that you will see when you enter is basically TED fund. And I could remember during my tenure, that was about 8-9 years back, we even had to make a presentation to those that were, paying their tax, so that they know exactly where the money was going. Very impressive. If you take an institution and you bring out all this intervention from TED fund over these years, you will be amazed that it is keeping the university and the tertiary education going. So the best to happen to the country, it's one of the best to happen to the education system, the issue of tertiary education trust fund.
Teaching and learning is one major preoccupation of the, federal colleges of education. That's to teach the students how to teach other students. And then for the polytechnics, it's all about trying to learn trade, and they have some vacation. When you leave, you shouldn't have to depend on white-collar jobs and the rest of them. You can be on your own at least. In these two institutions, your marks are there. If you really take stock, do you see fruit still coming out of those?
Yes, I can say yes. Because micro-teaching laboratories are still there. And we are even trying, even at this level, for me, because I'm still in the system, to ensure that universities are also having the same. Because like now, we are now in Faculty of Education. This is where you are now. But we are now about to have our own micro-teaching laboratory. So it's very critical to have one, because you are training teachers. And you will not expect that until they go out to do their teaching practice, they may not demonstrate within the school system how they are supposed to teach. So it's very important that we have this micro-teaching laboratories, and I'm happy and proud that at the university levels, because of the issue of this access, we introduced 12 new federal universities. In all the states that did not have any at that time. Of course, we were challenged. People were saying that we were introducing constituency projects because my president, President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, one of in his state and also as well as in my state, were also beneficiaries, but 2 states out of 12. So we didn't do that out of because it was our state. We did that out of the fact that every state should have equal opportunity. After all, our constitution is talking of equal opportunities for all. I was happy that I had a good president that was listening to, issues that once you bring, and then he knows that it's very critical, he allows. Even though I must say that I'm a lucky person, that's where I made progress throughout all the tenure. When I was, even during the military, I had, Zakaria Memalari, I had Rashid Shokoni who were listening, and we established that specialist hospital that is now a teaching hospital. And during the Sir regime, I was opportune to have renovated almost all the schools in Jigawa State, teacher training, laboratories, and so on. Anything I brought at that time, it was like people were thinking that I cannot call myself a super commissioner, but I was one of the few, not the major commissioner that he was listening to. And in that case, we made a lot of progress. And I was happy that when I was even the minister, the president, Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, also listened. He had that listening ear that everything you bring to him that is really relevant to the system, he will give you the go ahead. And in that case, we made a lot of progress. So any of these universities or any of the system or these advisory schools or whatever that people are talking about now, and I'm sure the governors and also the president, former, will also be happy that they have done something before. So these universities are making great marks. In fact, they are even bypassing some of these former universities. These old hand universities, if I can say so. Even though I belong to one of them, but we are making progress in Bahrain University, let me quickly. But at that time, people were calling them constituency project. Why should you are having problem of funding, you are not increasing and so on. But even now today, as I'm talking to you, how many universities are now introduced by this current administration? They show access, quality, funding will forever remain a problem in the system. So we have to continue to face the challenges. We have to continue to bring out ways of addressing these challenges.
The tool education, universities, schools, and polytechnics have to remain constituency projects. If they are maybe in quotes, but they are just priorities.
Exactly.
And one other thing I really want to look at is you being one of the super ministers of Goodluck Ebele Jonathan then, given the fact that within your 41 months in office, you're able to have raised the allocation to education ministry from about 200 billion to about almost 405. When you look back at those days, look back at those, achievements you were able to record, do you still, see the possibility of education, coming to the forefront?
It's possible. Like I said, based on political will and based on those that are in office to also ensure that they do that, put that pressure on the highest authority so that they can have their listening, they can listen to them. But what I am seeing as a light in the system now is that there is a strategy advisory committee for the universities, which I happen to be a member for National Universities Commission, which Professor Okebukula is chairing, and I'm happy to be a member of that advisory committee. And what we are doing in that committee is to ensure that we are up and doing in terms of looking at what is happening in the universities and what we advise government to do. And like the National Assembly, the bills that they are doing, we are also given advice in terms of advice number 1, 2, 3, about 50 or so advice now, which we expect that if they are following them, things will go right. And I will also hope that we have similar arrangement for the colleges of education and the polytechnics. Yes, so that you can have a group of people that are well experienced, who can now be looking at how things should be right, and then they can be advised. And of course, if the advice can be, implemented in terms of that. But I wish that the sector is more active than it is now. I wish it could be more active because education, everybody is part of education in the system. You are either a student, or you are a teacher, or you are a mother, or a father, or an uncle. So it affects everybody. So it is a system, it's a sector that is supposed to overshadow every other sector in the country. But sometimes you don't hear much, which I hope that they can put things right.
Let's talk politics now on the final note. I was listening with keen attention when you said, when you were asked to quit on Wednesday, went back to the office, and within 2 hours you were able to, get your handing over, down, and you left the ministry and back to the BUK.
Yeah.
That would sound as if you were expecting that. But I want to connect that to the issue of the little row in the PDP then. You have the new PDP, you have the main PDP, or whatever it is. You saw how you are from a state where the governor belonged to the new PDP.
Yeah, certainly.
And maybe you are looking towards that most likely will maybe affect it, so you are getting ready.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Well, anywhere you find yourself, for me, I always have a target. And I always want to reach that target. But I always have that at the back of my mind that may be over at any time. I was a victim of that, situation, which after even, I really, because of that, so I had to go. And that was why my governor, I have to pay tribute to him, made a very big welcome back for me in my state. And he called on all and sundry who all attended the welcome back in terms of my own performance and how I did for Jigawa and so on. But that's apart. In politics, anything can happen. After that, they were together. So you cannot say that the former president and the former governor are not, in good terms, even after we left. So it was a circumstance which we were part of those that were sacrificed in that at that time. But that handing over was something that I was expecting at any time, whether we are dropped or sacked or whatever, but I knew. So as soon as you are in a system, you have handed over not from somebody that. So you open up your own and start jotting down some of these things, so that as soon as whatever happened, then you really don't have much to worry. So it was something that I was expecting. It was okay for me, and it doesn't really matter because I know I did my best as Minister of Education at that time. Remember when we were sacked, I had visitors. Gordon Brown was in the country that week. And he was there with the president, and we made a presentation. They were going to give grant for, out of school and so on to Nigeria. And that week, I went to NTA to did a convocation lecture. On that very Tuesday, I came back and received Director General of School on Tuesday. And we had a meeting with her. And in the morning of Wednesday, I had a meeting with the UNESCO DG in terms of activities on how to improve Nigeria and so on. And then I went to Federal Executive Council that after I finished, we are going to meet again in the evening. So I came back as a dropped minister from the Federal Executive Council. So there was nothing I could do but to go back to the office to ensure that I tidy and I give out, my handing over notes, and I handed over all the strategy plans. Remember that I did not work just out of nothing. I had a one-year plan because I was commissioned to be a one-year minister. But then when I was reappointed, it was a two-term minister, I can say, if possible. Then I was also sworn in as a minister again. So I had a 4-year strategy plan. And we are following that with all the committees for all, the key areas. And that was where things were moving on very quickly. So I had to come back, and all these documents that we had in the ministry, I had to hand over to the minister I've said then, and then charge him to continue to do their best because, whatever happens, it happened, and there is no regret about it. I'm even opportune to have been one of the few ministers that, Goodluck Jonathan was listening to. And I know that the issue of sacking or whatever was not out of the fact that he didn't want to work with me, but it was part of the system that had to, things had to happen. So really I can understand what happened, and I remain grateful that I had the opportunity to be listened to, and we made a lot of progress based on that.
Any chance by me to meet any academic, especially a professor of any university in Nigeria, and of course somebody like you who must have been on the seat of a minister and back to the classroom, I really use that chance to ask about a lasting solution to the insistent as a strike. If I may ask you, what would you suggest could be a lasting, solution to these issues? Because it's drawing Nigerian education backwards. And it's taking especially the North. If it's taking the whole country 10 years back, it's taking the North 20 years backward, 30 years backward. And you are from the North. You're from the
Certainly, I was opportune, maybe no time, but I was opportune to have conducted a research. I led a team of researchers that did a comprehensive study on the state of education in northern Nigeria for Ahmed Bello Memorial Foundation. The findings are still the same. Everything poor quality, teachers, problem of infrastructure and so on. So yes, you are right. But the major, issue I can say in terms of addressing this strikes, not only by ASU but by other unions, is for government to be up to its own responsibilities. For ASU, I know ASU, they are human too. So they can understand if the funds are not there, they can understand. But ASU, they know a lot. Look at what is happening in the country. Look at this package of people that are not in the academics, not in the universities, or not in the teaching line. Look at how much they are earning. A young person can just graduate and he can earn like a professor. Even for me now, if my son now, one of my sons that is working with the private sector is earning more than a professor. Another that is working in the university but in the private university is earning half my salary. You see, so people, when you look at their packages, you look at the National Assembly, and we are all aware. When you open up this package, you can see why. Go to Central Bank, how much are they earning? What are they earning at the end of the year? What to NNPC? What to FIRS? And we're all in the same country. So as long as these inequalities are existing, definitely there is bound to be a problem.
So basically, some justice
has to be done. Otherwise, the issue of strikes, I am not praying, but I believe that people are enlightened and they are aware that government must be up to its own responsibilities.
On a softer note, I earlier asked you this, though, of the camera. Then we were just discussing before the camera started rolling. So you don't have any traditional title?
No, I don't, and I don't want to have anyway. I have OON, or Officer of the Order of the Niger, which I'm very happy to have. And I have several other awards.
Okay, what about politics?
No. I'm not interested in politics at all. I'm not. In fact, I was in politics by chance.
What I mean is vying for any political post as a woman.
I am not interested in politics at all. So I cannot vie for any position without that interest. I am more, even by the time that I was pushed into one thing or the other by chance, my own vision, my own view is to remain an academic where I am now. I am very happy and comfortable with the university system. I was a commissioner twice, I was a minister twice, but I know that if it is for you to make your own mark directly, and with that motivation in you, I prefer the university system.
Okay.
Yes.
Professor Rukayyatu Ahmed Rufa'i, we thank you so much for being part of Reflections this week.
Thank you very much.
It's our pleasure.
Thank you.
A very big thank you to you out there. It's been a 5 minutes discussion with Professor Rukayyatu Ahmed Rufa'i, a professor of curriculum studies, and of course, currently with the Bayero University, Kano. She was a 2-time Minister of Education, 1-time Commissioner of Health, 1-time Commissioner of Education in Jigawa State then. And you have, at least if you've gone through, you've heard what she said about education generally. Maybe you might have picked 1 or 2 things that will make it work for you and for the society. It's our pleasure. We thank you so much on behalf of all of us here. I'm Yusuf Nadabo Suman saying, see you next week with another personality. Bye-bye.